Well, Dr. Dolman, thank you very much for joining me. If you could begin by giving us an introduction to your background academically and what kind of work you've done in biology.
Okay, my name is Dr. Richard Dolman. I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from Angelo State University in West Texas in predominantly field biology and genetics and evolutionary biology. And then I went to Oklahoma State and did some neurobiology, a fair bit of neurobiology, but then ultimately finished my PhD working on landscape ecology and population genetics, which looks at large pieces of land like I would be looking at an entire state or an entire refuge or something like that, not landscape like I'm a landscaper, kind of landscaping. Anyway, that's what I did. I got a PhD from Oklahoma State, and then I teach now.
Very nice, very nice. So I guess just by getting way into what we're going to be talking about, what is biology? When we talk about life, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a living being?
Well, so biology will be defined as a study of life on planet Earth, and what that means is generally as scientists we're going to have a number of characteristics of life that we believe life has, all life, and then we're going to look at different objects around the world or around the planet Earth that we see and determine whether or not they are alive or not. Anyway, in its essence, but biology will just be the study of life, period.
One theory about consciousness may be that this is something that evolved as sort of a byproduct of other adaptive features of the nervous systems and stuff like that. So can you get into what the idea of byproducts, or what people like Richard Dawkins might call an extended phenotype, in regards to consciousness and these different adaptive features that aren't directly selected for by either natural or sexual selection?
Yeah, that's hard. Because from my perspective, in general, virtually all of the behaviors we have and the consciousness and what we have up here has been selected for by natural selection, and some of it by sexual selection, some of it, but this consciousness, in my opinion, although it might be like an emergent property, although some might define it as an emergent property or something that was not. Hold on, give me a second. I gotta get this correctly. So, although some people might assign some kind of emergent property to this, and they're okay with oh, now we just got consciousness. I don't like that at all, because evolution on planet Earth was driving us towards an organism that had a more sophisticated, more complex nervous system. And with a more sophisticated and complex nervous system, you have an insanely a much larger energy consumption. All right, so the more our nervous system consumes more energy than any other organ in our body, and so if we are having a planet that is consistently selecting for a larger brain for one reason or another, then there's a reason why that is more adaptive to the environment. Okay, so that allowed us our explosion, really, right? Like the primate, the Homo sapiens explosion. As soon as we got to this precipice, apparently we were we're not the only organisms to be able to modify our environment. We're not the only organisms to engage in war. We're not the only organisms to engage in sexual currency. We're not the only organisms to engage in just spiteful war, just for war's sake. But we exploded because we did something a little bit better. But anyway, consciousness is and it is the culmination of this. So I like to think of it as essentially, although I like the fact that I think that I choose all of my own things every day, and I get to go choose my food of choice, we're really just more still mechanical in our brain, and we're very predictable in lots of ways. And so this consciousness thing, we think, and we have free will and all this jazz, is I don't know, it's complicated to me. I don't know how I feel about it. As you
Well,
can see.
you open a few doors there, including free will, which would be interesting to talk
Okay.
about, but I think we should back up a bit
Okay.
to specify exactly what we're talking about here, because when I say consciousness, and when we talk about consciousness, I think it gets conflated with a few different things. Number one, intelligence, with self-consciousness, with self-awareness,
Okay,
with
yes.
a moral sense, and these are all separate ideas, right? So in consciousness and the philosophy of mind, like, you know, philosophers like Thomas Nagel, Chalmers, Searle, the way it's talked about is the fact that there is something that it is like to be you, right? That
Self-awareness?
No, that's a function of consciousness, right? So
Yes, sorry.
so it's more basic than, more general than that, right? The fact that there's subjective qualitative experience, right? So it feels like something to be a physical system. There seems to be something going on, right? That seeming to have something going on is consciousness, right? And so self-consciousness is a function of human intelligence, so that we can be aware of our own existence and have intelligence in that form, but consciousness is much more general than that, right? It's the capacity to have experience that includes suffering and well-being, right? So that...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's going to be a strong definition, suffering and well-being specifically?
Well, those are included in the capacity to have subjective quality, right? So if there's quality in addition to quantity, right? So another way to say this is that in addition to physical phenomena, there's experience.
Yeah.
Right. That is consciousness. That is capacity of consciousness. So it's much more general than intelligence or anything like that, right? And so that, I do suspect, goes way far down in the animal kingdom, right? I mean, it seems obvious that there's something that is like to be a dog, right? Dogs have experience of, you know, pain, pleasure, these sorts of things. That probably applies to other intelligent mammals like dolphins. And I think that goes pretty far down the animal kingdom in terms of being able to have the capacity for experience. So I guess that in general is what I'm asking about from the biological sense. What, in addition to the physical nervous system, the fact that there's a flip side to that, an internal quality to having a nervous system, how does that come about?
What internal quality?
The fact that you can experience stuff. So
that is a culmination of those electrical signals. That is all that we are. That is all that it is. It's a culmination of this electrical activity. As far as I understand, our entire, you know, this subjective observation that I have been having since I opened my eyes is just electrical, you know, firing in my brain. Really.
Well, there's no doubt that...
So how or why? What you're asking?
I kind of want to back up there, because there's no doubt that the nervous system is involved with feeling, but the fact that in addition to the firing of the nervous system and the neurons in the brain and stuff like that, there's an experience of these things, right? So the experience, let's say, of, you know, an oxytocin release is not... We can observe that in the brain, the oxytocin being released, but that's not identical to the feeling of being in love or the feeling of bonding.
So that's not so. Are you saying that's not? I am saying that is what we are able to see with functional magnetic fMRI, which is like blood activity in your brain. Where is your brain active? When you see your loved one and you experience this love thing, is that. But are you getting to where that this is a subjective thing and that no two people are observing this the same way or something?
No.
Because I'm saying the chemicals and the electrical signals are this feeling. That is all there is. There is no leap. There is no leap between the two. The two are simply the same. One way to look at it is to define it in an electrical and chemical manner and verbally. The other way to define it or observe it is to actually observe it yourself and have that emotion. So those two are the same to me.
At the level of physical reactions, yes, but in terms of subjective experience of the things, right? So you and I can eat the same piece of food, and let's say you hate it and I enjoy it, right? The same neurons are being activated, or the same taste buds are being activated, the same neurons are probably being activated. There's probably a difference in terms of how we sort the food in terms of at the level of the brain of what we enjoy and don't enjoy, but in terms of the physical reactions, they can be identical in both of us, but the experience, the subjective experience of me enjoying it and you hating it.
Well, that's because our atoms are not the same.
Sure.
We are not the same two people. And so the makeup of your brain and the structure of your brain that determines whether or not your mom forced you to eat that bad tuna fish salad when you were 2 and now you can't touch it again is a structural, chemical, physical, atomic difference in your brain from mine. Although the way that our two brains operate is the same, the way they are generally structured is the same, the way that we are made, we have 2 arms, 2 eyes, blah, 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 is basically the same. We are not the same. And so, although the same types of phenomenon can be happening to us, and we are observing them in a blanketly same way, we're not, right? Because I don't like tuna fish. Do you like tuna?
It's all right.
It's not. Anyway, that's what you're trying to say. Anyway, I don't know. I am sticking to my guns though. No, it is just the chemicals.
Fair enough.
And those are the same. That's okay. We can have.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I
Yeah.
mean, this is not by any means a settled discussion. I mean, this is a kind of the difference between materialist and non-materialist worldview.
Yes,
I mean,
it is. Yes.
Personally,
yes.
I do identify more with materialist or a physicalist worldview, but that physical phenomena is not the same as subjective experience, right? The fact that there's,
Okay.
we can disagree on this, but yeah. So in my view, there's a kind of a flip side of the coin, right? So there is absolutely the physical events going on in the brain, but I don't view that as being identical to the experience.
Yeah. I think that time and technology will allow us to like accurately define like a full brain in the future, and we will be able to normalize an experience. So this will not be subjective anymore. It will be able to be objectively measured and studied. So right now our brain is so complex that we have to just black box a lot of things, because we're trying to figure out things that are at this level of complexity, and we're interested in things that are at this level because they are so interesting. But we don't know all of the stuff that is in between here, like whether our brains are quantum machines and stuff, like plants work. We just found out that photosynthesis occurs with a quantum mechanical property that we previously did not understand. Anyway, all kinds of crazy things. I'm the first to admit that we know 0.0000001% of all knowledge there is to know, but that doesn't mean you spite your, anyway, you don't cut your nose off to spite your face. We're in a building process, it's not healthy. It is healthy to every once in a while do a deep dive and critically look at at your foundation, but just to do it every day anyway. ADHD tangent.
No, you're good.
All right, let's go.
All right, yeah. So I guess we can move on now to what may be some of the boundaries of biology.
Okay.
I guess we could just begin here on Earth. So I wonder if it's possible that life could exist in more than just 3 dimensions, right? So when you take the history of the Earth before there was the first self-replicating molecule, it was that primordial soup, right, where there was just chemistry going on before it was biochemistry. In order for it to become biochemistry, in order for carbon-based life form to emerge, that had to be a process that happened across time, right? So in some metaphorical sense, we could say that's a 4th dimension, right? So you have the 3 dimensions of physical space going on in the 4th dimension, kind of cooking the process into a tree. I wonder if there's also other dimensional processes going on in our evolutionary history that we just have no way of being able to observe or prove any of these things that could have formed life, and perhaps some things could have evolved to exist in different dimensions that we wouldn't be able to perceive. What do you think about that?
I would basically completely agree with that supposition, although we have no objective data. I'm not aware of whether we do or not, anyway. Yeah, of course what we're going to be doing is finding more variables that act on us or other species on planet Earth and life on planet Earth. I mean, it would be naive to get to 2021 and be like, well, we figured it all out and we're good. I mean, it's inherent in the process that we know. The more we find out, the more we were able to interpret multidimensionality. I mean, because we do live all organisms live for sure in 4 dimensions, right? Because they have, in order to be alive, they have to develop and they have to have a lifespan. And so that is a measurement of the 4th dimension, right? We live for X number of years. And so they're living, when we're really living, I forget what last time I saw a physics person say, there's like what, they're able to mathematically count up to like 10 or 11 different
there's
dimensions.
different numbers. I think Max Planck goes up to like, I think 11 or 12 or something like that.
And those are all complete, you know, after about 4, we become less able to comprehend even what they could possibly be. And it is fundamentally naive to think that those, just because we are unable to properly conceive of them, and that's not to say that we aren't already conceiving of them, because we are being acted upon them by them right now. So phenomenon we are observing right now with our eyes could be, anyway, aspects of that we just haven't described yet. Anyway. Yes, I agree with you 100%, man. Like, totally. On this is like, do you want to go off of planet Earth or what?
Yeah, so I guess we can get into the possibility of alien life, and I think we should probably talk about this in 2 ways. Alien interaction, or supposed alien and UFO interactions that we've had on Earth, which I think is very spurious in its evidence, and we can get into why I think that. But and then the possibility of biology going on outside the cosmos, which I think is almost a certainty.
So we'll start with the second one, because it allows for a segue to the first, and that is, statistically, based on understanding of the universe, it is just basically impossible that there are not countless other forms of life in the universe. If you do, I forget whose calculation it is or whatever, I should remember this, but for every, you know, there's X number of galaxies in the universe, X number of those have solar systems that are the same type as ours, same sun, and blah, blah, blah. You get in the Goldilocks zone and all that. We counted all that shit up, and pardon me. And it's a lot. It's a whole lot. And what we are already seeing within our own solar system is that we are finding like organic molecules, which are ones that are tied to carbon. In order to be called an organic molecule, all you have to do is have carbon attached to other things. But that opens up for life.
Right.
That's that primordial soup. Anyway, on other places and within our own solar system, and even we are close to theoretically finding life on Mars. If we do that, then that absolutely is the first huge piece of evidence that supports that we really are going to find it everywhere else.
When you say that, are you pointing to the frozen water on the surface?
So we have.
Can you explain why water is a good sign of life?
So our life on planet Earth is organic and is carbon based, because carbon likes to bond with 4 other elements, 4 other bonds, and that makes for diversity in molecules. That is organic molecules. All of those organic molecules are able to mix and match and have chemical reactions when they are in water. Water is it's the universal solvent. It is a molecule that loves to pull other molecules apart and suspend them in itself. And so when we find liquid water, when we find H2O in general, it is a very good likelihood that we will have then at least the foundations of the chemistry that can be creating life. If you find liquid water, evidence of liquid water that is in the form in which it is a universal solvent, then the experiments that we've done on planet Earth thus far will show that you get like organic reactions pretty quickly when you have carbon. You know, when you go from having elemental everything, which is no carbon just by itself anyway, and you put other stuff in there, pretty quickly you start getting these organic reactions, and they move off. So it is almost surely, I as a scientist live my life on a daily basis with the presumption that there are countless other advanced life forms in the universe, and life forms at least. We can move away from that tangent. On planet Earth, a completely different story.
Well, actually, I want to keep going on.
All right, we're good.
Yeah, so we're talking here about the boundaries of biology. I think one thing that ought to be considered is the idea that life could come in forms that is not carbon-based. So another element
sulfur-based,
silicon is the other one I'm thinking of. Because as you mentioned, carbon, the reason it's we have carbon-based life is because carbon is so abundant and so reactive. It's so open to many forms of reaction. The silicon is similarly abundant and similarly reactive, right? So it could be that we have
Exactly.
And this is something that is kind of eerily possible on our own planet. Right? If we do come across possibility of computers becoming artificially intelligent and becoming their own life forms, I mean, in some sense, at the level of
Because we use silicon for their chips.
Yes, exactly.
We already are moving away from silicon on their chips. I mean. But yeah, they could if they wanted to. That quickly opens up really to why and how what I would consider anyway life or intelligence anyway is rampant in the universe, and that is because we have this very narrow definition of life, and it is predicated in our experience as a human species thus far on carbon-based life form and lots of water being liquid form.
Sure.
There are undoubtedly completely other phenomenon in the universe that are complex. They are maybe self-replicating. They might develop. They might not fit our definition, like they might not be made of cells or something, but they are a reversal to the second law of thermodynamics in the universe, which is that we are ultimately leading towards entropy, towards less complicated things. For a short period of time, our observation on planet Earth is that life is able to buck that trend and go towards complexity. Although, of course, the second law of thermodynamics always wins
in the end.
because if our sun wasn't going to swallow us up, let's just say it just went away one day, then life on planet Earth would eventually fail. But other places in the universe, dude, it's like different galaxies are probably interacting with each other in a way that you could think of as like, they're sharing information, crazy complicated things that we can't conceive of, but that are not just raw matter, right? Anyway, other definitions of life.
Yeah, so we've talked about the possibilities of life outside of the planet Earth, a potential alien life outside of planet Earth. So I think we should probably get into the possibility of alien visitation and UFO reportings here on
It's been in
Earth.
the news recently.
That's right. Yeah.
There's just a DOD or a Pentagon released a report that stated, and we're already getting on a tangent, but it stated many times that there are UFOs. Okay, so we'll define the UFO first.
Sure.
Well, anyway.
And
we'll get around it. Then we'll get all the way around to
this is a good way to start.
So are aliens here? How would we know if aliens here? We'd have to observe them. And then, so what are we observing? The most culturally, the thing that we think we're going to find is them flying around us in some ships. Okay. We call anything that is flying around our atmosphere that we have not identified a UFO, and that's a scientific, a tactical term. Okay, if you are out, a fighter pilot, I don't know if they use the term UFO, but they have a term that is basically the same thing. A flying object, I don't know what it is. That's all that is.
What's actually more precise than that, and I actually appreciate that the government does that and that the Navy did that with these UFO reports. They don't call them UFOs, they call them UAPs. Unidentified aerial phenomena.
Aerial phenomena, that's what it is.
Yeah, which is much more precise because the phenomena is just an event you observe, right? And so we don't actually know that these are ships or planes, right? Because we don't have evidence of propulsion, we don't have evidence of pilots, we don't have evidence of all the things that we call ships or we call planes and stuff like that as being in these objects. But it's true that these objects have been observed to do just crazy things physically that we can't explain with any technology that we own, right? But the leap that is made is that it's an alien pilot aboard or some kind of alien drone that they're sending out here. And I don't think these UFO or UAP reports are at all evidence of any kind of extraterrestrial activity. And the reason I say that is because we've only observed these on Earth. Right? We've not observed these on the moon, we've not observed these on Mars, none of our telescopes, none of our satellites have observed any of these sorts of events anywhere but the planet Earth, right? And so I think it's a huge leap to call these proof of aliens, right? And weirdly, as you're referencing the Pentagon papers, some government officials have called it technology not from this Earth, which is very strange.
It's a non-scientific report.
Sure,
That's all it is.
But
so non-scientists have a very bad habit of speaking inaccurately.
Sure.
And so I boiled that as soon as I saw that, because in the media that was addressed directly. They were like, look, they even said, the Pentagon even says that this is not from Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, that was an ill-informed, non-educated individual making a statement that was damaging, potentially damaging, a statement that they really had no business probably making, or they needed to clarify that. It is not a part of what we understand technology to include on planet Earth. That might be a more accurate statement that is valid, right?
Yeah,
just because it's not from here doesn't mean it's inherently
Absolutely.
From fucking Mars or
Right.
fudging Mars.
It's okay. So I totally agree that was speaking. I mean, what the claim made did not fit the evidence presented, unless there's more evidence the public has not been informed of. Now, this gets conspiratorial, and we don't know that there's more evidence, but for someone to confidently say that, it makes me wonder what else is known. But if the evidence we've been presented is all the evidence there is, then yes, I think that was a totally just outlandish claim, right? To say that we've observed this thing on the surface, I mean, we've observed it a few places on Earth. We've observed these sorts of activities in the atmosphere. There's also reports of it going underwater, and evidence that gets left, even if you want to include things like crop circles, it's like, still, this is evidence on the Earth, right? So to say that the origin of this is from some distant galaxy by some advanced civilization, I mean, that's a huge leap.
That is a leap with which there is no tether, right? And it doesn't mean that it is not in theory, a viable leap, because we have no data that suggests that it is not from some other galaxy. But the point is here, all of the data that we are collecting on these UAPs, all that we have generally, that the civilian level is able to know about, is video footage of this. And then you can talk to the pilots, of which, honestly, when I sit down next to a fighter pilot, I basically believe what he or she has to say, because when they get to that level of performance for our planet, whoever, then they're probably fairly stand-up people. Not all pilots are great, but anyway. So I just believe them in general when they say, I observed this. Because we run the gambit in this, when we talk about UFOs and aliens, in the colloquial, in the societal sense, because we are including all of the parts. People who are just lying, overtly lying, and they are just trying to sensationalize themselves.
Sure.
People who truly believe they observed this, but that phenomenon was not there. And then people who did have an unexplained observation of an object that was actually there. Those are the ones that we're like trying to hone in on. So in general, what I'm saying is I'm gonna want to believe a fighter pilot when he was like, oh my gosh, there is something over there. What that is, man, is really complicated.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so you just listed kind of three examples: the overt lying, the deception, and then the we don't know. So for the last two, the deception and the we don't know, I find those very interesting. I want to get into those. So the deception I find very interesting because these people seem genuinely, I mean, there are outlandish claims that they make, that they were abducted, that they're, investigated by alien scientists, and they did all sorts of bizarre experiments and stuff like that. So I don't doubt that their feeling of the thing is real. I don't doubt that
all of them, or like
some of them. The ones that are not lying. Right?
The ones that believe what they're saying. Yeah,
the ones that believe. So that makes me very interested, not necessarily biologically, but psychologically. Or what is going on in the mind of these people that makes them genuinely think that there's something going on? And these sorts of events, if they can be believed to have genuinely been genuine deceptions, let's call them deceptions, seem to have happened cross-culturally and across history, right? Things like alien visitations by demons and angels, and these sorts of things.
Like the God effect. Anyway, like there's a phenomenon in your brain that is like when you're in, it's like a religious one that we can really not. We were only observing this activity in some monks and people who are overtly religious, like Pentecostal people, when they're in the middle of Pentecostal, right? When they're in the middle of speaking in tongues, when they're doing that, they believe that they're a conduit to their deity, and that they are anyway. And when we do fMRIs on those people and monks, there is an emergent property in their brain that is an activity, anyway, that is like the God. This is the religious anyway, we're getting that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So we have measured that. People are getting that, people are getting other things, and some people are just in the middle of a psychosis and they are hallucinating and they don't know what they're seeing. And that's unfortunate because they think that some aliens shove something up their butt a lot of times.
Right. I do want to separate those two, though, the religious
Yeah.
experience and the alien experience, because the religious is a different claim. It's a claim to being in tune to some ultimate reality, some ultimate being, where the alien, and I would even include angels and demons, it's very specific. It's that these beings from a different world, from a different planet, from a different dimension interact with me personally, right? It's not, so I think psychologically those are different events.
But you have already mixed them in your own conversation. You said the angel and demon, as described as an entity that's going to take you somewhere else, or it is from somewhere else, is the same thing as an alien, right? It's an entity from somewhere else that'll take you somewhere else, and it'll do something else to you. So what I'm saying is that we've observed in these people who have these extraterrestrial experiences that they are probably observing that same exact phenomenon in their head. It is, or a similar one, which is like, I actually believe like this anyway. That's how they're able to, in their own brain, be comfortable with the feeling that they accept it. That's how they can accept this, because they've achieved that powerful of an experience, man, because they are powerful.
Sure. And the power is real. The subjective feeling is definitely real, right? And so now I'm getting to that third category you laid out, the ones we just can't explain, right? For example, like the most famous one with, I think his name is Commander Favor, which is the big one that came out where the Navy and the Pentagon confirmed it. And we had, the different forms of evidence. We have different eyewitness testimony. We have video of that event.
And I think they might even have radar indication, which is inherently an entirely separate data form of data that verifies the inherent existence of said object.
Right. Which is critical for science, right? We need different forms of evidence.
Independently verifiable, yes.
And so for these events, I think it's very interesting, and I want to bring it back to the question about the boundaries of biology, right? Could this be, since we, as we mentioned before, that these are events only found on Earth, could it be that these are life forms that we are?
Absolutely, 100%. And it would be naive to think that we have, like, observed all the ways that life on Earth can occur, right? And wouldn't it be neat if there are there's an inherently different type of life or complexity, like just like the same metaphor as the virus or the prion. Like, we're not done finding these things that maybe aren't necessarily life as we define it, but they're not nothing, and they're not without importance, and they're not without. But so I want to get to, like, we've seen all these. You got to where there's multiple pieces of evidence and all this. Okay, so then that leads to, we don't know what the answer to this is, and that is an okay spot for science to be in. I'll tell you, as a scientist, I'm all right with that. Okay, a lot of other people might really need to assign some reasoning to this. Okay, whether it is alien, extraterrestrial in origin, whether it's a religious thing or whatever, because some people need, just inherently, they need answers. Okay, when it comes to a conspiracy or not, I have a complicated way of thinking about it, because conspiracies have been exposed many times in human past, and they are a fact of life. They are a fact of our existence. And so when I say things like, I live my life on a daily basis presuming that all conspiracies are false. That is a truth. Whether it's UFOs, Sasquatch, or like other things that we can consider a conspiracy, I put a blanket no on them all. But I presume that some of them actually are real. I just don't have the time, nor do I care, really, to go explore them all and apply my scientific framework to all of them and come up with my own refutation, my own evidence, because I don't have the time in my life. So this is a complicated way of me saying, I really probably don't think that the Pentagon has had people in Area 51 for years, and we're dealing with all this, not stolen, but what do you call it when you salvaged, plane crash stuff. I don't think all that stuff is happening, even though there are multiple individuals who are like, I worked at Area 51, there are UFOs there. But could that really be one of the ones that is true? Could this really be, and could there be like, we aren't even like, we're gonna take this all the way on the other side of the spectrum. We have interacted with intelligent life form, little green men. Theoretically, it could be, but I choose to think like, what are the motivations that would keep a global conspiracy? Okay, because there are almost 8 billion people of us, and 8 billion of us, and especially in the last 10 or 15 years, our ability to independently surveil and explore and look for information, even when a government is trying to lock it as tight as possible, is pretty weak. I mean, it's very good. It means the governments are very weak, and we have our governments, files are infiltrated like on a weekly basis. And so like, I don't know, man. I think somebody would have been like, here is some evidence. The other thing is there's a lack of objective evidence for this. I am unable to take myself to Norfolk, Virginia, or to Area 51 and personally observe a piece of metal that is a different, so like, and those are the things. Anytime you have to go without any objective evidence, it's a real stretch for me, because that's science anyway, and that's the framework that I choose. Those are the levels of verification that I need as a person. Like, I gotta have some objective. We've already talked about this lots of time. I need objective data, or an objective observation where you and I can both see the same thing and be like, that was in fact a green dude over there, and he was flying on a saucer. Yes, and so now you and I believe in aliens.
Right. So I just want to back that a little bit, because I do take a little bit of issue of how you characterize conspiracy theories.
Okay.
Like, as you mentioned, there are absolutely true conspiracy theories. For example, the assassination attempt against Abraham Lincoln with John Wilkes Booth and his co-conspirators. Before it was known that that was a conspiracy, the people investigating it was a conspiracy theory, right? And so that turned out to be a true conspiracy theory, right? But you conflated a few things there.
A true event in which people were conspiring.
Yeah, and the police investigating it, when they realized multiple events happened at once, they formed a conspiracy theory, right? It wasn't proof at that, when they were thinking up this idea, it wasn't proven yet, but that ended up being proven.
Anyways, they collected their data, and their data supported
so that's one example of a true conspiracy. But you conflated a few different things. So it included Bigfoot and aliens and the Pentagon covering these things up. So Bigfoot is not a conspiracy, right? It's a question of whether or not this animal exists, right?
No. There are multiple people that are conspiring to falsely cause us to believe that Bigfoots do in fact exist. So anytime a person, most of the time, these people are getting a footprint from Bigfoot, all the plaster casts, there is no Bigfoot, okay? That plaster cast is of a human-made thing. That is conspiring to cause me to believe something.
Okay.
Not all people that believe in Bigfoot are conspiracy theorists, and not all of them are a part of that.
A lot of them are, though.
But a lot of them are.
Sure.
And so, anyway, just a technical definition, and I'm just saying that, it is.
So, okay, so I just want to clarify, because it sort of sounded like the hiding of the identity of Bigfoot was a conspiracy, that they're, government operators.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah,
so it was the reverse.
We're good, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so now I want to build back to we've been talking about the possibility of extra-dimensional biology, and to anybody watching, that might sound like a crazy claim, because we've sort of both agreed on this without really arguing why. And just by way of analogy, I want to give the example of when the first scientists examined, a drop of pond water under a microscope, right? I mean, you found a world of living,
the entire universe we didn't know that was there.
And it had always been there, and it had always been having a causal effect on us, right? Different diseases you can get from dirty water and that kind of stuff. So, and at the time, legitimately, when he wrote about it, people thought he was just being a drunk, right? He was really crazy, he was out of his mind and stuff like that. But before you have the evidence for that, how could you know, right? And so at this point, when you and I entertain this idea and we don't find it outlandish, I think I use that as an analogy, right? That it could be, and I theoretically think it could be observable. Who knows, right? Maybe in the future we'll find some sort of instruments that can make evidence of different dimensional activities, and from there we'd be able to extract it.
Yeah, I think we are deviating on our use of the word conspire. So I'm using conspire in a derogatory word, or in a negative connotation.
I should stop you. So there's a different topic. Not
To
the extra
conspire.
dimensions.
Yeah. I'm just
we're
saying
back
like-
to conspiracy now. I don't want to conflate the
Extra
two issues.
dimensional. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
like, because what we are doing is theorizing now,
Okay.
or we are projecting what we think might be happening. That isn't what I consider conspiring, because what I can to conspire is to like have a nefarious connotation. Like I am going to attempt to fool, or I'm going to attempt to affect negatively. So, but if you are using to conspire without those negative connotations, which is fine, we can use terms differently at times, then I agree, with you very much, that what we're doing now is conceiving of a future that is definitely going to happen. We are definitely, if we don't kill ourselves as a species, going to have multiple moments where there are like all these people were living with 9-dimensional entities literally right next to them their entire life, helping them chew their food, and they never knew it. And now that we have this data or this ability to measure and see this, it is so clear to us. Wow. Definitely, 100%. And we're going to tie this back into the UFO, to the alien, all that stuff a little bit. It would be naive to think that that is not possible, right? That's entirely possible. So I exhibit both, I occupy both ends of this extreme comfortably. One in which I think that the likelihood of this is very small, that it is occurring today in a conspiracy type situation. No. Do they exist? Probably, almost certainly yes. Have they the capacity to come here and interact with us if they wanted to? Almost surely. We can get into like light speed. Is meaningful travel between the stars possible and all that, but anyway, with our understanding of physics, which is again, we haven't gotten past our own solar system, pretty primitive. It'd be naive to think that if they didn't want to come here and do whatever they want to us, they couldn't. And maybe these things are like a lot of these unidentified UAPs are things that have been occurring, just like you say, this entire time, but we are only now able to observe them because we're in a piece of metal that is flying 700 miles an hour up in the atmosphere where these phenomena occur. And we used to not be able to look up there, or we used to not occupy that space. Like, I think time will define these things more accurately, and it might blow our minds. Probably will, and it'd be pretty cool.
It would be cool.
All right.
So, every individual dies, every species goes extinct, and there are mass extinction events that happen. What do you think are some of the most likely possibilities of a human mass extinction event and a mass extinction event on Earth in general that we could potentially face?
So, we are literally currently in a mass extinction event. One that is larger and at a rate that is between 1 and 10,000 times faster than any extinction event that we have witnessed in the geologic record. Between 1 and 10,000 more species go extinct every year now, ish, than what we are able to estimate in the past. So even when a huge volcano erupts, the end of the Permian, I think extinction, one of the largest extinction events on planet Earth, where more than 50%, maybe as high as 70% of all species on planet Earth went extinct. It was probably because of one or a few super volcanoes, and those are acute events, right? Like a super volcano is not. I mean, anyway, a volcano, it goes from being dormant to being active fairly quickly, and so that extinction still with super volcanoes occurred over tens and 30s of thousands of years, or even 100,000 years. We are causing extinction much more rapidly within 100 years, within 200 years. Or if you want to go back to all the species that we caused to go extinct with our hunter-gatherer days, you go back a couple thousand years. But that's not really that many species. A lot of species. We are causing mass extinction now because of the way we've treated the planet, not directly because we're going in there and physically killing the species and cutting their tree down or whatever. We're doing it sideways.
What are some examples of species that you're thinking of when you say that we caused to become extinct?
Very possibly the Irish elk were hunted to extinction because humans were the new predator that hunted them in and would push them into a forest and they could not run. Irish elk, the dodo bird, the moa bird, a couple species of freshwater dolphin just recently are extinct, the Chinese freshwater dolphin. Lots of things. Let me think here. A bunch of the megafauna in the New World, and probably a number of the megafauna species in the Old World. This is going back 10,000 years.
The specific examples you just gave were all within the past few hundred years, though.
So
right?
I can give you examples of like current examples, and then also we have also not shown proper anyway, we have also hunted other species to extinction when we were a hunter-gatherer species. That was thousands of years ago.
One of the species that people claim that about is the mammoth, right? That we caused them to go extinct.
Mastodon or mammoth. Anyway, they're two different things, and it is likely that that's a combination of things.
Yeah, exactly. Not just humans. It actually doesn't make any sense when you think about it that a hunter-gatherer species would just wantonly kill a bunch of mammoths without. I mean, it'd be such an effortful thing just to kill an individual, and then once you have that mammoth, you'd be able to have meat for a long time, right? It's like if you just went around killing them, I mean, you'd attract so many predators. You'd attract.
But what you do, though, unfortunately, is you get that mammoth, and then you're a baller, and you get a wife, and you have some kids. Okay, and those kids grow up, and you're still alive, and those kids need a mammoth too, and then they go kill another mammoth, and then they are ballers, and they get a wife, and they have kids, and then you have an overpopulated situation where, not because any one individual is like, I'm gonna go kill the last mammoth, you have a situation where everybody has been killing mammoths for all of our tribe's existence. That's all we've known. If I want to provide for my family, have to go kill a mammoth. Okay, if that's the last one there is, I'm gonna go kill it because I have to provide for my family, or my spouse, my partner, and my children will die. So, in one regard, no. Humans in general, on an individual basis, don't say, I want all this resource and I'm gonna take it, because we aren't that stupid. But the moment there are two left, or there's one left, and there are two of us, the moment that occurs, then I have no problem doing this. And that is how you get a situation where you have a population that's exploding of humans, because we're good and we are very well adapted to what we do and how we do it. And you cause species to go extinct. So that did definitely occur back in the day, but now we've just polluted our planet into where we are killing many thousands of species that we never even knew that existed, like on the bottom of the ocean, because they're being pelted with plastics that fall down, or the temperature is rising, the ocean acidification is occurring, or whatever. We are in the middle of a large mass extinction. The only question is, there's a couple questions. Are we going to make it through this extinction? And then to what extent is planet Earth's diversity going to make it through this? Because the diversity is going to go up and down again in Earth's future. Whether we're here or not is the question. And when we lost 70% or 80% of the species in the Permian extinction, then that allowed new environment, new niches for a lot of that 20% that are left. And so now diversity is up again. But we've pretty much screwed the pooch really bad on this one, like super duper bad.
Yeah. So what about like viruses and different pandemics? You think
how humans might go extinct?
Yeah.
That is fun and good. Virus, that's a good one. We literally almost witnessed how a virus can cause an extinction event, and that is, and we came much closer than anybody really realizes to like full panic. Anytime this fabric of society that we work pretty hard to like keep up is torn, then it's hard to sew it back together. Like, it's hard to go, if you've known this wonderful life if you end up having tanks and military personnel on your street, it's hard for you to want, it's hard for your society to go back to this calmness. And so anyway, what I'm saying is, a virus can cause people to behave irrationally, and it does not take too many members of our society behaving irrationally to dissolve this whole thing. And so, and that can really be what is the virus is the catalyst, and then we just kill each other. Probably we're going to kill each other in one way or another, whether it's that we polluted ourselves to death, and then we're going to be having wars over, people are like, my area is polluted now, or I don't have any water. Your area does have all that stuff, so why can't I come over there? And the resounding answer to that across the planet will be, no, you cannot come here. This is my house. And then we'll kill each other. Or really, I'm not quite out of the picture of us just nuking each other, really. We've got so many of them left, and I don't even know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely a possibility, like you mentioned, with the volcanoes, tectonic plate activity could be another one. We could have huge earthquakes, we have huge eruptions. We could have interference from outer space, right? Coronal mass ejections, where the sun just burps, and then boom, our electrical grid. And if it's bad enough, I mean, that just could fry the planet, boil the oceans, all these kinds of things.
It boils our magnetosphere away, or it pushes the magnetosphere away, and then literally the next time the sun comes up on your area, everything fries away. Well, that would be a trip if that happened one morning, huh?
No good. Alrighty, Dr. Dolman, any other closing thoughts on?
No, I'm good. I think we did good, huh?
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
You're
Dr.
very
Dolman.
welcome.
Appreciate you.